Hey there, I'm talking about Fable.Remoting today. My name is Brett Rowberry. I have a few goals here. First, I submitted this talk to give me an excuse to learn Fable.Remoting. I'd never used it before. I think I learned enough to talk about it, so check. Next goal is take less than 15 minutes. After that, I hope you come away convinced to try Fable.Remoting if you otherwise wouldn't. And also, this is my first time speaking at a conference like this, so maybe it will convince you to submit one next time. So why would we use Fable.Remoting? Well, there's three things that I'm going to talk about today that hopefully will convince you to try it out. So the first is perhaps you've built an application where you have an API and a front-end web app. And in the front end, you're like writing strings for the routes. Well, if you use Fable.Remoting, it's like calling a method. You don't have to do that. The second thing is you don't have to deal with JSON on the client or the server. Behind the scenes, over the wire, like yes, that's happening anyway. But again, you don't have to deal with that yourself, and we'll show you that. And then the last thing is one of the shortcomings we have today when you're using Giraffe for your web API, there isn't a great way to do OpenAPI or Swagger type documentation. And this isn't that either, but it's pretty good. So we'll get a look at that. So I have a little demo that's slightly more exciting than the counter example that we have in the safe stack. It's a unit conversion service. And everything that I'm talking about today, you can find the completed example out on GitHub with this very long title, FableConf 2019-Fable.Remoting. To save time, this is what I did. I got on the command line. I said .NET new safe. I opted for Giraffe instead of Saturn because I didn't need that. Sorry, Chris. And then for communication, I said remoting. And then I did a fake build run to get started. And that's all I've done. So here is that initial counter sample app. So we're going to adapt this to be a unit conversion service. So the first thing we need, we have this shared file, right? We're going to go from that to the much more exciting example of, we'll have something called a conversion. And what makes up a conversion? Well, the first is you have to convert from something. So we're going to have a source. And then we're going to have something called a target that we're converting to. And then after that, we're going to need some input value to do a conversion on. And through the magic of F#, we know that we don't have length defined. So let's take care of that. So what is a length? Maybe it's like a millimeter. Maybe it could be a meter. Maybe it could be a kilometer. That seems like a good start. So there's our type. This is just boilerplate that comes with Fable.Remoting, and here's some magic. So the reason you don't have to do routing strings on the client is you have this route builder method or function that takes care of it with a type name and a method name, and we'll show that in action. And then we don't have an iCounter API anymore, do we? We have an iConverter API, and it will have a single method here. It's convert, and it's going to go from some conversion that we pass in, and our goal is to eventually get a float out of there. So that's the shared part. So let's head over to the server side. So server side, we have our old counter API. We don't want that. We're going to use our converter API. And that, see, it's already picked up there. And then we're going to need some input, a conversion, as it were. And we're going to return the length.convert applied to that conversion. But that method doesn't exist. So let's go to create that now. So head over, this is server-side logic, right? We're going to add a file called length.fs. And once that is ready, we are going to have some functions in here. So it has to be a module, not a namespace. So here's length. So we're going to do a poor man's database here. It's going to be a function that takes our length discriminated union. So maybe we had a millimeter, and then we're going to have a meter and a kilometer. Those were our choices, right? And there we go. How many meters are in a meter? I think it's 1. How many meters in a kilometer? Should be 1,000. And how many millimeters in a millimeter? I think it's 1,000th. So we're looking pretty good here, but it doesn't know what this is. So here we open our shared that we defined. Okay, so there's our poor man's database. Now we're just missing a single thing, and that is our convert function that takes in one of those conversion objects. And let's consult our database. So we're going to need a source factor to do the conversion. And we're going to get the conversions source. We're going to need a target factor. And we're going to get the conversions target. And the last thing we need to do, this logic's tricky, but I've practiced this, so I'm pretty sure I'll get it right. You take the conversions input, and you multiply by the source factor and divide by the target. And that's really all you need there. So now server side should be happy. Great. And let's head over to the client now. So this is not an Elmish talk, so I'm not going to show you the Elmish stuff. But what do we need to change here from the template? Well, instead of an iCounter API, it's going to be, what is it, an iConverter API? Okay, pretty good. And copy and paste, and that's convert or something. And we don't have time because it's lightning talk, so we're going to magically copy and paste a working Elmish app right here. And that takes care of that. But we did the important part together, right? So let's run this thing. So hopefully this comes up reasonably quickly. So we're building. It always feels funny to say we're building JavaScript, but we kind of are, aren't we? So we're building the .NET and stuff. And then it's going to build the JavaScript, and this will pop up in just a moment. I have 6-ish minutes. Okay, all right, here's our app, nice and big so you can see. Let's see here, let's take a number, I don't know, 5. 5 meters, 2 kilometers. It's like 5 thousandths. Okay, that seems pretty good. It must work, right? Let's look at this. So I said you don't have to specify the routes, and you really don't. So looking back at our example, Elmish, we'll just scroll here, like, where are the routes? Well, there aren't any. You're using this API thingy in all of your code. You just don't have routes. It's magic. But of course, that's not really the case. So we're in our inspector here. Let's make this web request again and take a peek. So I think I need to zoom out to see. So if we look at the request, haha, there is JSON, isn't there? We've been lied to. So here's the source, it's a meter, there it is, target's kilometer, and input's 5. And then if we look at, where'd that thing go? Oh yeah, here's the magic string for the route that we didn't specify. Fable.Remoting did it for us. So, okay, so it's using the same tech, you just don't worry about it. It's kind of like when you use, what's it called? Fulma, you don't deal with the CSS. You're using it, but you don't have to touch it if you don't want to. Okay, so I said we didn't have to specify routes. We didn't. We didn't have to deal with JSON. We didn't. So now the other thing is I mentioned documentation. So this is easy to get wrong, for me anyway, so I'm just going to steal it from my completed app. So there's 2 bits we have to worry about, and I will explain these. So and this is a server-side concern, right? Because it's documenting the API. So we'll stick that in, and the other thing we need is this one line here in the web app right before the end. Okay, so this first bit, if you want to add Fable.Remoting's docs, you do this docs create for, and you pass it your API definition, which is that awesome idea of, hey, let's use a record that has members for the operations. And then you give it a name, and then I only have a single route, that convert thing. So you stick that in here, give it an alias, a description, and then you can do examples. F# is our friend. US foot was in my example. We don't have a US foot, so let's go ahead and add that there. Okay, and then that's going to be a problem in our length as well, right? And through the magic of pattern matching, you forgot US foot, silly. So we'll take care of that. And don't ask me why I know this, but 3048. Okay, so then that should take care of that. And this last bit, this is where the docs reside, like from a API perspective. So routing with docs, location, and then the actual documentation object here. So let's head back over to the browser. All we have to do is paste that on. And here's our, didn't scale perfectly, but good enough. So we have a single post. Here's our lovely description I made, description. Here's our examples. There's the JSON. So I didn't write JSON, I just wrote F#, but it's showing what it would be. So kilometer and meter, you can call it like you would with a Swagger UI. Kilometers, meters, 1 is 1,000, cool. And our other example, meters to feet, 3 and some change. So there you go, that's Fable Remoting. Awesome.